I knew the funeral had started when the CFO called the pension freeze a small blip. He said it in the same tone you'd use to talk about a printer jam. Not a word about the 3 decades I'd poured into building Stratag, from 2 folding chairs and a space heater into a publicly traded juggernaut. Not even a call. Just an email, one of those cold HR messages that looked like it got spit out by a chatbot, choking on buzzwords about evolving fiscal priorities. Your pension benefits are temporarily suspended pending cost optimization review. No greeting, no signature, not even a damned comma splice to give it some personality. I sat there in my kitchen, robe still warm from the dryer, toast untouched, rereading the email like it might change, like if I stared hard enough, the words would reorder themselves into something human. But they didn't. They never do. And that was the moment, sitting in that dim Ohio kitchen with the refrigerator humming like a sad jazz bass, that I realized they'd already buried me, said their little prayers, tossed in a budget-cut flower, and moved on to appease their private equity overlords. And if you're listening to this and thinking, damn, that's cold, then do me a small favor, hit that subscribe button. Yeah, I know, 97% of folks just lurk here, eavesdropping on our chaos without commitment. Toss us a like or a sub. It keeps the team going when corporate decay like this makes us want to scream into our coffee mugs. All right, back to the slow-motion train wreck. See, this wasn't just any pension freeze. This was my pension. 30 years of Sundays, crises, emergency offsites, acquisitions, firings, recoveries. I was the guy they called when vendors walked, when data centers burned, and when our first COO tried to expense a yacht and we had to plug a $6 million hole overnight. I never asked for the spotlight. I liked being the scaffolding unseen, but essential. And now I was just omitted like a typo, like the past was an inconvenience to their spreadsheet. But they'd forgotten something. After that email, I stood up, opened the cabinet above the fridge, the one no one ever looks in because it's where old warranties and dead pens go to die. Pulled out a thick black binder. The front label had yellowed with time, E. Carter, Founding Docs. I blew off the dust like I was waking the dead. Flipped past incorporation filings, original team bylaws, early equity splits. And then I found it. Clause 14D. I'd written it into my founder's agreement back in 1994 after my first lawyer, God rest his sneaky soul, insisted on it. Any material adverse change to the employee's compensation package shall trigger an immediate severance payout of $25 million USD, payable within 72 business hours. At the time, it felt ridiculous. We weren't worth $25,000, let alone $25 million. But he said, Ethan, one day this company's going to get big and stupid, and when it does, you'll want a kill switch. I thought he was being dramatic. Turns out he was just early. I read that clause again, slower this time, like it was an incantation. My finger traced the line where I had initialed in blue pen just under the board chair's spidery signature. It wasn't ambiguous, it wasn't vague, it was a bomb with a 3-day fuse, and the bastards had just lit it. I didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't throw anything. I just closed the binder, made myself a second cup of tea, and opened Outlook. Email to Strata Growth Legal was short. No drama, no threats, just a subject line. Clause 14D activated. I didn't expect fireworks, but I knew this much. They'd stopped seeing me as a person. They forgot I'd helped build the foundation they now stood on. They thought I'd go quietly. They were about to learn that legacy doesn't vanish just because you stop including it in your PowerPoints, and that some contracts, especially the ones written on sweat and spite, never expire. Clause 14. D wasn't just words on paper. It was the quiet snarl of a forgotten god. I stared at it, printed in that clunky old SIF font. Tucked between dusty pages of a contract no one in the new regime had ever bothered to read. The wording was perfect, not legalese, not bloated, just surgical precision. Any material adverse action to the undersigned's compensation shall immediately trigger a severance payout of $25 million USD, payable within 72 business hours. I chuckled, actually chuckled, the kind that sneaks out when the universe stumbles into poetic alignment. I remembered writing it with Bruce, the original company lawyer, back when the office was just 4 of us and a fax machine that screamed like a demon every time it worked. He'd said, "You're going to get screwed someday, Ethan. Might as well make sure they pay you for it." We laughed then, drunk on cheap scotch and the smell of new drywall. I never thought I'd actually use the thing. Honestly, I'd forgotten it existed until HR decided I was worth more as a line item than as a human being. The clause wasn't tucked in a side addendum or one of those nebulous subject-to-board approval riders. It was right there, page 19. Never struck out, never replaced, because nobody ever thought the quiet guy with the tea-stained shirts and the battered leather briefcase would pull the pin. But I did with all the fire of a bored librarian filing overdue fines in the middle of a riot. I scanned the page, took a screenshot, attached the original PDF we'd notarized back in 2001. Then typed a short note to my lawyer, Charles Rayner, still on retainer after all these years. Subject line, Clause 14D, just checking. That was it. 5 minutes of my time. I closed the email and went about my day. Watered the peace lily, cleared my inbox, helped rewrite a client brief some hotshot PM had butchered with a thesaurus addiction. Just another Tuesday, except this Tuesday had a nuke hiding behind my ceramic mug. Charles called me 3 hours later. "Ethan," he said, voice like gravel in a leather pouch, "that clause is still very, very active. There's no rescission notice, no amendment, and since you never converted your founder's agreement into the new executive comp package, they're screwed." I could hear him smiling through the phone, the kind of smile that comes with invoiceable hours and someone else's panic. I didn't smile back, not yet. "Good to know," I said. "Let's keep it quiet for now. I just wanted confirmation." He hesitated. "Do you want to send formal notice?" "Not yet," I said, sipping my now cold tea. "They need a chance to insult me first. Makes the paperwork taste better." He laughed. "You always were the calmest grenade in the room." Damn right I was. I hung up, opened a fresh file on my laptop, and started organizing the digital paper trail. Old board minutes, original offer letter, emails confirming my status over the years, every little breadcrumb that would prove they'd never voided my rights. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't some grand heist. It was just a man checking the lock on a door he built 30 years ago and finding the bolt still held. The thing about corporate amnesia is that it's contagious. New blood comes in, gets high on buzzwords and quarterly targets, and forgets how the floors got laid. They think loyalty expires with the version of Excel they use. They forget some of us didn't just work here. We are here, woven into the damn drywall. So I sat back, document window open, clause highlighted. They'd made the first move. My job now, honor the contract. They wanted to cut costs. Let's see how sharp their scissors really were. Subject line, Clause 14. D. Activation. Message body. As discussed, due to the recent freeze on my pension benefits, Ref HR 456B, I am invoking Clause 14D of my founder's agreement. Please confirm payout timeline and point of contact for wire details. ECI proofread it twice. No exclamation points, no capital letter rage, no threats. Just the kind of email that tastes like static. Quiet, dull, laced with high-voltage consequences. I hit send and watched the message vanish into the same system that had just tried to erase my legacy. Then I took a breath, finished my chamomile, and walked into the Tuesday strategy meeting like nothing had happened. The room was full of the usual suspects. Tyler with his undercooked MBA smirk. Zoe pretending her rebrand presentation wasn't copy-pasted from a consulting deck. And Brent, our CFO, clacking his pen like he thought it made him sound authoritative. I sat in my usual seat, didn't speak, didn't even open my laptop. Just observed. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed. From Brent C. Collins, Stratagrowth. Subject Clause 14, D. Ethan Clause 14D is from a legacy doc and was superseded in the 2014 comp restructuring. Legal agrees it's not enforceable. We're not processing that. Best, Brent. Best. That little bastard ended a multi-million-dollar denial with best. I stared at the screen so long my tea went tepid. He'd just dismissed a 30-year contract like it was a calendar glitch. I didn't reply. Brent was the type who treated people like errant spreadsheets easy to close, annoying to reopen. But here's the thing. I never signed the 2014 comp restructure. They'd sent it. I'd reviewed it and returned it with one note. Original founder status unchanged. Will retain standing agreement. They filed it. I had the email confirmation, and now someone on their legal team was about to discover exactly how airtight my paper trail was. Enter Malene Junior Associate, fresh out of Northwestern, probably still paying off her student loans. She replied to Brent's email chain, CCing me, probably by accident. Hi all, just flagging that I located a notarized version of the original founder agreement from 2001. Ethan's signature is present and there's no formal rescission or override documented in subsequent comp files. Still reviewing to confirm enforceability. Will update shortly, still reviewing. That was the sound of a crack forming. By lunchtime, I'd gotten exactly one Slack ping from Zoe asking if I could take a peek at the mission statement language again. Still feels kind of boomer. I gave her a thumbs-up emoji. Meanwhile, I was quietly compiling a digital folder titled Enforce 14D. Inside, PDF scans, email threads, meeting notes, and yes, my rejection of the 2014 restructure with timestamps and delivery receipts. They wanted to pretend the clause didn't exist. Fine, I'd give them a map. By late afternoon, the mood had shifted barely. You wouldn't notice unless you were trained in watching faces for tremors, but Brent kept glancing at his phone like it was giving him indigestion. Zoe's second urgent meeting got mysteriously cancelled, and Malene didn't reply again, but someone in legal requested access to our oldest HR drive. That drive hadn't been touched in years. I know because I built it. I finished out the day as I always did. Reviewed vendor contracts, approved 2 purchase orders, scheduled next week's QBR. Nobody noticed the extra glint in my eye, the subtle steel in my posture. Because when people think you're harmless, they don't see the spark under the surface. I didn't want war, didn't need revenge. I just wanted what I was owed. And if Brent and the board wanted to play dumb, then I'd let the facts scream for me. Politely, of course, nothing, not even a read receipt. 3 days passed, and not one person from legal or the C-suite acknowledged my message. Brent radio silent. HR pretending their little pension freeze was a hiccup, like I wouldn't notice my retirement vaporizing midweek. And legal, legal was doing what legal does, stalling, sweating behind NDAs, hoping if they closed their eyes long enough, I'd just retire or die quietly in the corner. They didn't understand what kind of silence they'd just purchased. I didn't escalate, didn't stomp around the office like some over-caffeinated department head demanding answers. I just documented. Every message, every ignored ping, every timestamp. The folder I'd started, Enforce 14D, was now color-coded, indexed, and mirrored to a private cloud server I'd had since the Yahoo era. Nothing dramatic, just a slow tightening of the noose. Professional, quiet, surgical. Then the static started. Vendor reps cancelled next quarter's partnership calls. One of them, a guy named Mitch I'd known since fax machines were still a thing, left me a voicemail. Said they'd heard rumblings of instability and were reassessing risk exposure. Mitch doesn't use words like exposure unless he smells smoke, and for Stratagrowth, that smoke was starting to seep under the doors. At 7:42 p.m. that night, I got CC'd on an email by accident again. Bless Malene. From Malene L. Lopez, Stratagrowth. Com subject, Clause 14. D. Verification follow-up. His signature is present not only on the founder's agreement, but also on the original bylaws. I've compared them against the digitized archive and the hard copy vault scans. No override has been executed. No board amendment rescinds the clause, and his rejection of the 2014 comp package is acknowledged and timestamped in legal's inbox. Clause is active. That clause is active. It hit like a siren behind closed doors. Not for me. I'd known it was active since the second I pulled that binder off the fridge. But now they knew, and the longer they said nothing, the more radioactive it became. I began assembling the final dossier. Not for court, not yet. Just preparedness. Board minutes from the 2001 approval meeting check. Original offer letter from July 1994, check. Email chain rejecting the 2014 package check. Notarized hard copy of the clause, including signature match from the internal registry check. Even a photo of the original framed newspaper clipping. Strata Growth Secure Series. Founders Ethan Carter and David Lin lead the charge. My name was printed in ink before most of the current leadership even had LinkedIn accounts. I saved it all to an encrypted drive, then printed a physical binder copy, just in case someone got stupid and tried to accidentally delete shared folders again. This wasn't paranoia, it was protocol. You don't survive 3 recessions, 2 hostile takeovers, and the Silicon Valley ego complex without learning to expect cowardice wrapped in a polo shirt. Meanwhile, at the office, nothing looked different. Zoe still spitballing synergy ideas like a wind-up pitch deck. Brent still sipping green juice and calling it a reset. But if you listened close, you could hear it, the tightening. An executive assistant whispering in the hallway. A rescheduled board audit meeting with no reason given. Security clearance changes on internal doc access logs. A few sudden out-of-office messages from the same clump of directors who championed the pension freeze. None of them spoke to me directly, but I felt their eyes lingering in meetings, the way they avoided my gaze, not out of malice, but fear they'd see themselves reflected in it. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even insulted anymore. I was focused. They thought they were playing defense. They didn't realize I'd stopped playing altogether. I was simply aligning dominoes, and gravity was on my side. The call was supposed to be routine, one of those glossy finance briefings where executives assure investors everything's under control while tap dancing around a dumpster fire. I joined in mute, as I often did. Camera off, name labeled just E. Carter, wedged between half a dozen acronyms and guys named Brett with too many vowels in their last names. Brent, our CFO, kicked things off with his signature smug calm, the kind that made you want to throw a stapler through a window. We've identified and resolved a minor contractual inquiry regarding a legacy executive agreement, he said. Minor, like a paper cut. It posed no material risk and has been internally addressed. Internally addressed. That was rich, considering I hadn't received so much as a calendar invite, let alone a response to my last email. But then came the spin. Our liabilities remain well within projection. The leadership team is committed to fiscal clarity and minimal disruption during this transitional optimization phase. They were tap-dancing barefoot across a minefield, every syllable reeking of someone trying to outrun a clause they hadn't bothered to read. I didn't speak, didn't flinch. I just jotted a few notes, time-stamped the call, and saved the recording. 12 hours later, my lawyer called. Charles's voice was unusually tight. Ethan, you're going to want to see what just came in. It was an anonymous tip, a whistleblower leak funneled discreetly through his firm's encrypted intake portal. No attachments, just a screenshot. An internal Strata Growth legal email, short, brutal, from Brent C. Subject, Clause 14. D. Let him push it. He's too old to fight this in court. We stall him out. He'll cave or croak. Either way, we win. I stared at that line until the screen blurred. Too old to fight this. I'd been called many things in my life, tenacious, reserved, intimidatingly composed, but this was the first time someone had tried to weaponize my years against me, as if 3 decades of keeping this company upright through crises, lawsuits, walkouts, and economic implosions were just an expiration date. I didn't shake. I didn't slam anything. But the shift inside me was tectonic cold, permanent. I opened Outlook and began drafting. 2. Board Strata Growth. Com subject, Clause 14. D. Whistleblower evidence attached. Dear Board, please find attached a screenshot of internal communication from your CFO, submitted to my legal representation via whistleblower protocol. The message in question explicitly details your executive team's awareness of the contractual validity of Clause 14D, as well as an active strategy to obstruct and delay lawful payout based on my age. As a reminder, Clause 14D was confirmed enforceable by independent counsel and remains unedited and in effect. This correspondence represents not only a breach of internal ethical conduct, but a documented attempt to suppress legal obligation via age-based discrimination. Please confirm wire transfer instructions and timeline by Friday Cobby. Failure to respond will result in immediate filing of injunctive relief, interest accrual activation, and notification of your financial institution and compliance officer. Regards, Ethan Carter, founding partner, Strata Growth, Inc. I hit send. This wasn't negotiation anymore. This wasn't diplomacy. This was enforcement. By Thursday, Brent had cleared his calendar for the week. Legal stopped replying to routine messages. The finance Slack channels turned into ghost towns. One director's assistant emailed me directly, asking if I'd be attending next quarter's strategic offsite. I responded with a single sentence: that will depend entirely on your compliance with your own bylaws. And now they weren't just ignoring me, they were afraid of me. Good. Friday came like a ticking bomb in a linen envelope. No fireworks, no apology, just the absence of a wire that should have landed by noon. 12:01 p.m. My phone didn't buzz. 12:17, my bank app showed no new deposits. By 12:30, it was over. The window had closed 72 business hours from initial notification, as outlined in Clause 14D. They'd missed it. Whether out of arrogance, panic, or sheer stupidity, they let the clock run dry. And with it, activated the clause's next paragraph, one they definitely hadn't read. Interest, 3, 2 per business day. Automatic escalation to default status. Notice to third-party fiduciaries and banking partners triggered. Insurance review clauses engaged. The best part? My attorney didn't even have to lift a finger. It all happened the moment his notice hit send. By mid-afternoon, Brent Collins had resigned. The company email was a short internal announcement. After careful consideration and with deep gratitude, we announced the departure of Brent Collins, who is stepping away for personal reasons. Brent has been an instrumental part of our journey and leaves behind a legacy of growth and innovation. Legacy of growth. Cute. The only thing he left behind was a crater the size of our entire liquidity pool. By Monday morning, Strata Growth's $80 million credit line was quietly frozen. No email, no negotiation, just a triggered clause buried in their lending agreement. Any breach of material internal contract, resulting in payout over $10 million, shall result in immediate risk reassessment. Breach, $25 million. By Tuesday, the vultures arrived. Business Insider, founding clause costs. Strata Growth 25M. Pension freeze sparks legal meltdown. Bloomberg, hidden clause, visible consequences. Fortune, he didn't yell, he just collected. Requests poured in, 6 journalists, 3 podcast producers, even a finance YouTuber offering a dramatic reading of the clause. I declined every single one. My only public statement went out through my lawyer, posted in Times New Roman, black text on a white background. I did not sue. I did not threaten. I enforced what they agreed to. Ethan Carter. By Wednesday, Strata Growth stock slid 18% in 5 trading days. The board tried to halt the bleeding with a press release about operational recalibration and temporary resource consolidation. Translation: layoffs. 57 employees got calls that week. Good people, most of them. They didn't deserve it. They didn't mention my name in the memos, but every whisper traced back to me: Ethan's clause, Ethan's penalty, Ethan's bomb. I wasn't gloating. There was no fist-pumping triumph, just a deep, full-bellied stillness, like the air after a backdraft sucks the oxygen out of a room and leaves only silence and ash. Monday, 9:06 a.m. The deposit hit like the quietest earthquake in banking history. One line buried in a sea of routine statements. Incoming wire, $25 million. 00 USD. Strat settlement, clause 14D. No calls, no follow-up, just digits. Unmistakable, undeniable, absolutely earned. At 9:11, my attorney confirmed the wire. His message was short, almost amused. It cleared. And then some. Minutes later, the new CFO, a puppet named Jeremy, who'd been sitting 2 levels below Brent a month prior, sent me a gravel-thin email. Subject: wire confirmation and apology on behalf of Strata Growth. Dear Mr. Carter, please accept this confirmation of the full severance payout in accordance with Clause 14D of your founder's agreement, along with accrued interest and legal fees as stipulated. On behalf of Strata Growth, I sincerely regret the oversight and the circumstances that led us here. Your contribution to this company's legacy is immeasurable. Warm regards, Jeremy L. Hartman. Chief Financial Officer, acting. Warm regards. They always reach for warmth when the check clears. I didn't reply. What was there to say? My signature was already stamped in the infrastructure of that company in the source code, in the crisis protocols, in the policy manuals they'd renamed but never rewritten. I was stratagrowth. They just forgot until it cost them everything. That afternoon, I left the house. No fanfare, just a small duffel bag, my notebook, and a thermos of black tea. I drove 6 hours upstate to a lakeside cabin I'd bought years ago and never told a soul about. No signal, no inbox, no headlines. I lit the fireplace, sat on the deck. The wind slapped my face raw while the lake glittered like cold glass. In my lap, a leather notebook I'd been writing in since the first HR meeting where I realized I was becoming invisible, stamped on the cover in worn gold letters. Lessons they forgot. On the last page, I wrote just one thing. They built the company on my back. I left with what I was owed, no more, no less. I closed the notebook. The storm was over. And they would remember me, not because I burned it all down, but because I never had to raise my voice to make the walls collapse. Appreciate you sticking around, you wise old rebels. Smash that subscribe button, or this fossil might just cause another epic fiasco.